Hello, it's Miss Shamaya back again today to read some more chapters from Captain Underpants and the Attack of the Talking Toilet. I think I stopped on chapter 2. Chapter 3, The Flashback. It was about 1 year earlier, and all of the faculty and students of Jerome Horwitz Elementary School had gathered in the gymnasium for what would later be known as the sticky chair incident. George and Harold stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, said George, Harold and I have invented something that is guaranteed to keep you all glued to your seats. Yes, said Harold. We call it glue. Mr. Krupp became very angry. You two did not invent glue, he shouted. He stood up to take the microphone away from Harold, and his chair stood up with him. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed. The school secretary, Miss Anthrop, stood up to help remove Mr. Krupp's chair from his trousers. Her chair stood up with her, too. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed even harder. The other teachers stood up and, you guessed it, they were stuck to their chairs as well. Everyone in the audience howled with laughter. One kid stood up to go to the toilet, and his chair came up with him also. The audience stopped laughing so hard. They all quickly checked their chairs. Suddenly, the laughter stopped completely. Everyone in the whole school was glued to their seats. You see, while it was true that George and Harold had not invented glue, they had invented a new kind of glue. By simply mixing putty with concentrated orange juice mix, they had created a quick-drying, body heat-activated glue. Then they had applied this special glue to every seat in the gymnasium except theirs. Everybody in the gymnasium was glaring at George and Harold and seething with anger. I've got a good idea, said George. What? Asked Harold. Run, cried George. George and Harold were grinning from ear to ear, remembering their silly invention and the chaos that followed. That was hilarious, laughed Harold. Yeah, chuckled George. It'll be hard to top that this year. Well, you won't get a chance this year, said Mr. Krupp. He took out a magnifying glass and held it up to the fine print on the sign. This contest is open to all students in the 3rd and 4th grade, except George Beard and Harold Hutchins. You mean we can't enter the contest? Asked Harold. It's worse than that, laughed Mr. Krupp. You boys can't even attend this year's convention. I'm putting you two in study hall that whole day. Mr. Krupp turned and walked away, laughing victoriously. Rats, said Harold. What are we going to do now? Well, said George, you know the old saying, if you can't join them, beat them. Chapter 4, The Invention. Early that evening, George and Harold sneaked back to school with their supplies. They crept into the gymnasium and peeked around. I think somebody's still in here, whispered Harold. Oh, it's just Melvin Sneedley, said George. Melvin was the school brainiac. He was busy putting some last-minute touches on his new invention for the contest. We should wait here until he leaves, whispered Harold. No way, said George. He could be here all night. Let's just go over and talk to him. When Melvin saw George and Harold approaching, he was not happy. Oh, no, he said. I bet you guys are here to mess with everybody's inventions. Nice guess, said George. Listen, we promise not to mess with your invention if you promise not to tell anybody that you saw us here tonight. Melvin looked lovingly at his invention and reluctantly agreed. I promise, he said. Great, said George. What is that invention of yours anyway? It just looks like a photocopy machine. Well, it used to be a photocopy machine, said Melvin, but I've made some major adjustments to it. Now it is an invention that will revolutionize the world. I call it the Patsy 2000. It'll revolutionize the world, and you named it Patsy? Asked Harold. Yes, said Melvin. Patsy is an acronym for photoatomic transubgulating yectofactor traptomizer. I'm sorry I asked, said Harold. Allow me to demonstrate, said Melvin. The Patsy 2000 can take any one-dimensional image and create a living, breathing, three-dimensional copy of the image. For example, take this ordinary photograph of a mouse. Melvin placed the photo of the mouse onto the glass screen for the Patsy 2000 and pressed start. The lights in the gymnasium dimmed as all the power in the entire school seemed to get sucked into the Patsy 2000. Soon the machine began to vibrate and hum loudly, and tiny bolts of static electricity snapped out from underneath. I hope that thing doesn't explode, said Harold. Oh, this is nothing, said Melvin. You should have seen how the Patsy 2000 reacted when I copied a poodle. Finally, after a series of flashes and loud zaps, everything stopped. A small ding was heard, then a tiny mouse crawled out of the side door of the Patsy 2000 and onto the floor. Isn't it wonderful? Exclaimed Melvin. George inspected the mouse closely. That's a great trick, George laughed. You really had me going for a while. It's not a trick, cried Melvin. The Patsy 2000 really does bring photos to life. I've even created living creatures from paintings and drawings. Yeah, right, laughed Harold. And I thought we were con artists. George and Harold walked away chuckling. It was time to move on to the bigger and better things.